dog. And it is knowing our enemy and all the enemies that we face. And believe me, for whatever reason, he doesn't want us to know it. So he doesn't even want us to know about today, honestly, who God is. Don't forget the clothing swap is October 7th, which is next Friday, not this Friday, but next Friday. There's 2 swap dates. I actually have some calendars for you made up of all this stuff that kind of comes up here. Our service project, the Paul's project at Grace Campus, is that Saturday from 5:30 to 6:30, where it's just serving a meal. We'll be there that day, and I'll have some more information coming up. If you want to bring your families or children to see what it's like to serve, and you want to do that, they are welcome. Okay. We have If Table also coming up on the 14th. We're going to meet at Rosa's, and it's so much fun. God always shows up, and feels like 2 hours fly. Maybe we stay longer, who knows. But we have Propel event coming up November 12th. We are going to be leaving. That information's on here too. We'll be leaving on that noon on Friday, coming back Saturday when it's over. So you wouldn't miss Sunday church. You might be a little tired, but you won't miss it. And then If Gathering is coming February 3rd and 4th. I already registered. I don't know if you saw that, but it's $10, or if you can't pay, that's fine. They said that they just want people to go and fill up LCU, and it's a Friday evening and all day Saturday. It's supposed to be amazing. So just starting the revival, I think we're already kind of in the middle of that. So if you wanted more information about any of this stuff, we'll get it to you, and I'll give you this before we leave. It's something I came up with, and because there's just so much happening in October, I couldn't keep it all together just by myself. So I've had some help doing that. Okay, so, all right, we're going to get started in a word of prayer. Jen, you want to open us up today?
Precious Heavenly Father, we just thank you for this day, and we just thank you for the cool air this morning, walking into work, just refreshing of how you just make us feel in the morning, Father. I don't know, I just felt your presence so heavily this morning on all these ladies. So, Father, I just thank you for this time that we're here to hear your word, and we just ask that our ears be open and our hearts open, and that we receive what you want us to hear. And, Father, that everyone that's here just feels your presence, Lord, and that they feel safe. And we just thank you in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. So today, the great I am solution. And who is the I am? God. Yes, God, the Trinity. And so today we're going to be kind of diving into who God is. And the reason we've gone through this series of part 1 is knowing. First, we had to know our world, right? It's a little bit scary, right? Then we had to know ourselves last week, get to know ourselves. And hopefully you dived a little bit into Psalm 23. You were able to do the homework. And maybe, are there any takeaways from that? From your homework in Psalm 23? I know, Jen, you were talking a little bit about it. I didn't get to hear y'all's perspectives on it, though. Tell me what you thought. Jen? Oh. She's reviewing. Okay.
Let me see what I thought. The part about I shall not want, it was about do you struggle to feel content, and I just felt the Lord impress upon me for myself, and maybe someone here that's here tonight, that I've been dealing with what I call men relationships or whatever for so long, and I've looked at all my journals. And each time I'm just dealing with that same thing. Maybe the names change, but it's the same thing. Mm-hmm. And he's like, you've been doing this long enough. It's time to, like he told the Israelites, it's time to look north and let's move. Mm-hmm. And so be content in me, right, and not anything else.
I'll tell you, Jen, being content is huge. And you're talking, and that's what it is. I think we want to find contentment in that person and that partner sometimes that God gives us, or this. And I know as a married woman, I deal with that. That content is, when you're talking about that, it's not you know, that it's just a single lady
Right,
thing.
right.
Because honestly, when you're married or you have a partner with somebody, that's what you want. You want to feel content. You want to feel good when you're together. You want your relationship to work, and you want to meet somebody, however it's done in the movies, and live this fairy tale thing. And we wrestle with the God we cannot see, and to be content with Him and all the ways that He wants to help us be content and fill our lives. And we're like, what does that even look like? Somebody throw me a bone here, because what you do find is that we do tend to cling to that other physical person. And like you said, the names may change for some of us. You know, one season it could be your husband and you have kids and then you're clinging to them till they leave the nest, and it's like, oh, where are you going? You know? And then, so it just kind of, like you said, it does change names. It does. We have all these seasons as women where we want to be content with our lives. With our lives, when we're supposed to be content with Him. And so what does, you know what I mean? What does that look like? And to be able to say it, sometimes it's half the battle. To admit that that's what it is. God, I need to cling to you and be content with you. And not every other person that I'm grasping at that I can physically see. And that is hard, because those people are important. They're extremely important. I mean, we're going to learn about that in a couple of weeks, but they're not everything. They're not. So thank you for sharing that. Anybody else? That one was huge.
It's so weird that you said content, because I was just showing my daughter, it's like, I wrote content, but not in that way, because I'm happily married, but it's more of a content, I guess it's because I'm old too, and I just content in the way that I'm not so stressed wanting more things, you know?
Right.
As women, we go back to comparing ourselves to others. Well, why can't I have that nice house? Why can't I have that nice car? Why can't, you know, as teachers, why can't my room look like hers? Why can't I write lesson plans? But just feeling, you know what, it's okay. So just even just that feel that feel of just, it's okay.
Right.
It's okay.
So
It's
content
okay.
with yourself.
Just content, yes.
Yes.
That it's okay that I'm not gonna stress over,
Right.
you
Right.
know, having the big fancy house, having the big fancy cars, having the big, you know, because there was a time where that wasn't important. Material things.
Right.
Is what, you know, so that's not important anymore to me.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's not as, you know, like you said, yeah, I'm content with God. I mean, that's another
Yes.
place where it's just.
And who He is, and then who He's made us to be, that we
Yeah.
become comfortable in our own skin finally.
Doesn't mean that my life is perfect. and
Right.
everything, you know,
Yes.
I have issues,
Yes.
but I'm not worried about stuff like that.
Right. How many of you feel that way? Like maybe over time, seasoned, sort of in a way. Yes. And so then it's harder, I think, for the younger generation, especially if you have kiddos in school. They want to be wearing the nice stuff. They don't want to go to school, you know, in the Walmart clothes. And when you get to a certain age, that's kind of the way it is. They're not content. And so we as mothers, grandmothers, teachers, whoever we are in the community have to be able to have that. And that's kind of, you see a movement of that. And that's happening out there in the world with Dove and everybody else, you know, to be happy in your own skin almost. So everybody's got that concept down. You know, but what do we do with it? How do we wrestle with it? Especially if you don't know God, you know, and He's not a part of that. Anybody else?
I learned that I'm a lot like a sheep.
Isn't that amazing? Who got that? Oh, you got both hands. You know, and I did it in the book. Yes, in the
So I
book.
have
And
my feet
even,
up too, like I'm
right,
laying down.
yeah, got both feet up. We're upside down. We're a cast.
I'm glad you didn't get that videotape.
Yeah, that part was funny though.
No,
How
yes.
How they fall over.
They fall over.
You know, they can't get up without.
Right.
Without the.
Yes, isn't that funny? No, that, I mean, and that's why I did it in this way, so you could kind of, I didn't say this is how it relates to people. In the book, it does. It's very specific, but I left that out so you could make your own interpretation of what God wanted to show you and how we are sheep and how we do that. Yes, and how we are wandering aimlessly, you know, and how He gets a hold of us all these ways that He cares so much. And what feels like a yank in this direction is really His love. And so it was just such a beautiful thing. I know I learned so very much in doing it, in wrestling with it myself. Anybody else?
Well, and then just hearing that over and over again, the Lord's, the Lord's my shepherd, I mean, you can hear it, but every time I heard it, it was something different.
Right. Yes.
I mean, I've heard that all my life.
Right.
But-
I had to. I felt like it just
But I
ministered
learned
something
something,
new.
yeah.
Yes. And that's what I wanted, was to give you something new, some insight that I had gotten, like I said, supernaturally through Betty and Jen, just of seeing that. Because in the Word, we want to be His sheep. He actually will separate us out, the sheep from the goats. And so I don't want to be a goat. Please don't cast me to the left side. I want to go to the right. And when you read that, you understand, no, I want to hear His voice and do what He's asking me to do.
And if you wander away, you'll go.
Yes, the one. And so I hope that you were kind of comforted this week by your shepherd, to know that he cares for you, he loves you, and that's who he is. This is a setup for the great I am who he is, because you got to maybe see him in a new light this week, that he is the shepherd, the great shepherd, right? Anybody else before we move on the psalm?
I thought it was kind of touching where you had that the shepherd stays on his hands and knees pulling out all the poisonous plants and weeds. I don't know,
Yes.
something about that was very
Yes.
touching, that, because the Lord fights our enemies, right?
Right.
Anyway, when I read that, I thought it was kind of touching that
Yeah.
the shepherd would do that.
He does. And really the shepherds do that in that field where they go before the flock gets there, and they will pull out every
They know
poisonous
that,
thing,
don't
and they
they?
have to know what's poison. I mean, first of all, they have to know what's poison, but the fact that he goes before they even get there and prepares this table before them, in the presence of our enemy, that's what it is. He takes the poison, he knows where you're gonna sit, and in that presence, he's watching, this watchful eye for any predator, any enemy that's gonna come for you. And so, why wouldn't we trust him? You know what I mean? That's what it is. Why wouldn't we trust him? Just trust him that he's got it. And that's what I think this week, for a lot of us, we were getting, is that he's got it. What am I worried about? Just a sheep. He's already gone and done a lot of the work. I just gotta go where he's leading me to go. And so I hope you were blessed by it. I know I was. Anybody else?
Well, I was just thinking of when you were talking about the weeds and how the plants look the same except for a little different color in the flower. And it made me think about what Jen was saying, about all the things that we were saying and how, not only does the Lord pull out those things that would damage us in terms of wrong relationships, how he steers us towards the right church, how I think, how he plucks out roots of discontent, how he plucks out roots of regret, how all along he's always pruning and preparing that ground where we're going to walk. We don't know always what lessons that we're going to come across in church or in life or what books or what stories, but how he's gone before all of that just to make it rich and fertile for our hearts, so we can be loved and tenderized and nurtured. And I think the other thing that I think about is, how how sheep communicate. By butting their heads and just being together. And I was reminded of, I shared this with Lupita one night at the F table, but I was having a really horrible day at work and just so discouraged and just so down, and I needed to call her department for something, and just hearing her voice, just lifted my heart in such a way, because she shared a little bit about her struggle, and I know the depth of her faith, and I know how deep her love is for the Lord, and what an example she is, and how committed she is, and just to hear that victory in her voice just nurtured such life in my heart. And I thought about last week how at our table we all had just the right thing. We all played a different part in speaking into each other's lives. And that was also another picture of how God prepared a table in the presence of our enemies, in the presence of doubt or discouragement or heartbreak or discontent, whatever it is we face, how he's always gone before us and prepared us and uses us in each other's lives, sometimes so much without us even knowing. And so that's what was on my heart before I came tonight, how grateful I was for the opportunity to be able to come, to know that when we were all together that there would be life amongst us, because each of us brings our story, and we bring our relationship with the Lord, and we bring His love and our victories, our sorrows, our experiences, whatever it is that, makes us who we are, we bring it, and without even knowing it, Lupita, without even knowing it, imparted such strength to me that day by a conversation about that long on the telephone. And, never underestimate what your presence brings. What it brought last week, what it brings tonight, what it'll bring in all the days ahead. You're a part of where He's plucked out those bad things and He's left your flower and your plant. You know what I mean?
Amen.
Yes.
Dunsky.
Oh, thank you for sharing that. No, I love that. I love that. So much to learn, right, this week. I'm so glad that you enjoyed it. Share, if you want a copy of it, I did send it to your email if it was listed. So if you want to share it with somebody, in your family, you can give them a copy. If you need something else, just let me know. So let's get real for a moment. Who is God to you? How do we know He's real? Do you hear Him speak to you? And if so, what ways does He speak? So just thinking by yourself, who is God to you? Now, these are all, it's like, okay, Ann went there. These are like so huge, deep theological questions here. Who is God? I mean, that's kind of where I was going, kind of in a way. Do I know Him? Who is He? How do we know He's real? How do we know He's different from who somebody else worships? Okay, so that I can know that I'm worshiping the right God and I'm listening to Him, right? And so what are some ways? How do you know He's real? Is there somebody you just know He is? Who is He to you? Who He's been to you? Something solid? Or have you heard Him speak to you? And if so, what ways does He speak to you? Anybody want to share?
I believe He speaks to us because even without us asking verbally or just out there, He answers our questions, or when no one even knows what our question
Right.
really is.
Right?
He already brings an answer with someone else.
Right.
And it's like, okay. Like, thank you. You just answered me.
Right.
Because
Right.
it's the way we least expect it. And that's how I came to really understand and realize that, okay, yeah, He's talking to me. And sometimes we don't see it.
Right.
We ignore it, or we don't want to hear it.
Right.
And God is the creator of everything.
Mm-hmm.
He is real.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how I think He speaks to us.
Yes. It's definitely,
Through our-
yes, through other people.
Through other
How many of you have had that experience? Anything different? How God may speak to you differently, or maybe an instance that He spoke to you differently
Through music.
through music.
Definitely
That's a
through
good one.
music.
Yes.
No matter what we're going through, if you just, I listen to a lot of Erewhon and K-Love and whatever's happening throughout the day, there's
Right.
a song and instantly I'm like, I know that was you, God.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
Through that, and like she said, with other people as well.
Mhm.
And so that's how He speaks to me, through music, and
Yes, definitely.
Also through, especially when I go to the mountain, I just feel closer to Him.
Okay. Yes.
The air, I don't know what it is, but, and I think it's just because it's so majestic and so beautiful there.
Right,
Not that
right.
it isn't here in West Texas.
This is really flat.
But yes. So.
Well, there is something about nature. I mean, you're talking about flowers.
Yes.
We're talking about, creation. And so, of course, He's going to speak to us through that, through places. And there's something about mountains. There is. There is. We'll learn a little bit about that today. So, I mean, there's all these different ways that we already know that He's speaking. For some of you in here, though, I think you may not know, is he really speak to me in that still small voice or that bold voice that I hear some people say they hear. And so you question. You are, like you said, I not only hear him when I'm listening to music, I know he's there, I know he's real, but is there more than that? Is there more than the worship? Is there more than my friend telling me something that I just need to hear right then? And so I think that's where we go with a lot of that is he still speaking supernaturally? Is he still really speaking to me? First of all, and so that's kind of what I began to think in listening to him and what it is that he wants to say to us. Even in just tonight, what he wants to say. He wants to say a lot of stuff. So in the beginning, before there was anything and nothing, before there was nothing and anything and something and a little tiny anything at all, there was God. The very first verses in the Bible say so much about the very nature of a God who always was, has no beginning whatsoever. It says, in the beginning, God. That's the way it starts off, the whole thing. That he already was there when there was nothing and it was void, right? So it's difficult to imagine a timeless, endless, eternal, immeasurable God because we ourselves function in a world that's constantly moving, aging. I don't like looking at the aging part of it, but, we're moving forward. So a God who was before me, before I was even anything, before I even have my first memory of anything, right? He was here. Okay? So, limitless. The very definition of God cannot be limited. He is eternal, needs nothing. He is all-knowing, all-powerful, and everywhere present. Everywhere. You can't hide from him. You can't go anywhere in this entire world. You can't even go to the moon and hide from him. And it is impossible to truly even grasp the concept of God, yet he created us with magnificent purposes in mind. So our God, our creator, Lupita said that. He created everything, the heavens and the earth, the light. He separated it from darkness, the sky from the earth, the land from the sea. He created every plant and animal, from the birds of the air to the fish of the sea, every single thing. And then he takes this dirt from the ground and he breathes life into his nostrils, the breath of life, it says. And he took the rib from this man and he created a woman. Oh, this sounds ridiculous, does it not? Okay, so these two human beings are created in the very image of God. We're going to go to Genesis 1:26. We're going to go to several verses today. So, you got it? We're going to be going. The first mention of the Trinity is right here when he made people out of worthless dirt, mind you. Okay, it says, then God said, let us make humankind in our image, according to our likeness, and let them have dominion, there's that word again, responsibility, okay, over the fish of the air, over the birds, over the fish of the sea, and over the birds of the air, over the cattle, and over all the wild animals of the earth, and over every creeping thing that creeps upon the earth. This is the first mention, like I said, of the Trinity. And you know what? Science does want to copy this. They're cloning all kinds of animals. They use stem cell research to do all kinds of crazy stuff. All you got to do is pull it up on your computer and see what's going on in science, right? It just reminds me of that joke where the scientist was standing with God. He said, we've finally done it. We made a human being. And God said to him, get your own dirt. Because that's what it is. We think we can do this. Who made the dirt? I don't think we'll ever be able to make dirt. Or make something from nothing, mind you, is what he's saying. So get your own something from nothing, is what he's saying, right? So God, our creator, he created people knowing that he'd have to pay the highest price because of his love for us. And when he's referred to in the Bible, it's often as the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And this is how God confirmed who he was. So that you knew you weren't serving an idol, that you knew who God was, he gives himself a name, this name, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. And so, he says this even to Moses, saying, I am the God of your father. And we'll read this later. So, God of Abram. Here we have Abram. He's a descendant of Terah. He was born in the of the Chaldeans. And the Chaldeans and all their neighbors worshipped a galaxy of greater and lesser gods and goddesses. And when God speaks to Abram, this is before he's Abraham, father of many nations, he gives him the command to leave the land of his father. He is also telling him to leave this country behind and the way that the country does things. He has lived in a place, God is calling him out, and he's lived in a place and they serve other gods. They serve all kinds of other gods, right? And so God is going to give him a new way of doing things. So he needs him to leave where he's at, the only place he's ever known, and trust in a God that he's never known. Okay? And he gives him a promise, and it's more than a promise. It's a covenant. Covenant means bond, this coming together. He's saying, I am your God. I am your God. Not these other gods that you've seen since you were little bitty growing up. Can you imagine? And it is something that's going to take trust, because before they even leave Ur, his family leaves Ur. It's mentioned in the Bible in Genesis 11:30 that Sarah is barren and she has no child. Before they even leave, before God even says anything, they have to let you know this woman can never have kids. But he makes a very specific promise with him. In Genesis 12, God tells Abram to leave his father's house to a new land, and he will show him, and that God will make a great nation out of him and bless him, even to the point that those who bless him will be blessed, and those who curse him will be cursed. And he makes a covenant with Abraham, and we're still under this covenant. That's how serious a thing he did. And he did it when his wife was barren, and his name was Abram. He wasn't even a father yet, didn't even think he was going to be a father, and he's about to be a great nation. You have to have kids to have that happen, or something. But they have Isaac, right? The promised son of Abraham. And after Abraham dies, God bless Isaac in Genesis 25:11, which we'll go there, 25:11. After the death of Abraham, God blessed his son Isaac, and Isaac settled in Beer-lahai. So, he's establishing his covenant with him, a very specific covenant with Isaac now. So God speaks to Isaac and also tells him where to settle, also tells him that he's going to bless him and fulfill the oath he made to Abraham. And it's because of Abraham's faithfulness. We see that in Genesis 26:2-5. The Lord appeared to Isaac and said, do not go down to Egypt. Settle in the land that I shall show you. Reside in this land as an alien, and I will be with you and will bless you. For to you and your descendants I will give all these lands, and will fulfill the oath that I swore to your father Abraham. I will make your offspring as numerous as the stars of heaven, and will give your offspring all these lands. And all the nations of the earth shall gain blessing for themselves through your offspring, because Abraham obeyed my voice and kept my charge, my commands, my statutes, and my laws. Side note, there will be ways our children will benefit from our faithfulness. That is what the covenant is. It's what it does. Right? So it's very clear here that Abraham obeyed God, even in his humanity. You read through all the stuff he did. Much like David. And he kept God's commandments, statutes, and laws, it said here. How did Abraham know any of this? There's no Torah. Moses hadn't written it yet. He's not even born yet. Right? And it says, Abraham obeyed my voice. God is speaking. So, God of Jacob. Jacob was the twin son that stole his brother's birthright. He tricks his father Isaac into giving him the blessing. He spends much of his life on the run from his brother Esau because of it. And we read in Genesis 28:13. It says, and the Lord stood beside him and said, I am the Lord, the God of Abraham your father, and the God of Isaac. The land on which you lie, I will give to you and to your offspring. Same God, calling them out with the same covenant. God verifies his covenant that he's made by telling him, I am the same God your dad served and your grandfather served. Right? So Jacob actually receives a name change after he wrestles with a man that leaves him limping. And he was a man who wrestled and wanted blessing at no cost. When you read his story, you see he was after blessing whether he stole it or not. And his name was changed to Israel, yet we still refer to him as Jacob. So when Moses comes on the scene, the Israelite people have become numerous and powerful, so the Egyptians oppress them and make them slaves. And Moses is picked up out of the water and raised in Pharaoh's house. And after doing some running of his own, God remembered his covenant with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And that is in Exodus 2:24. God heard their groaning, and God remembered his covenant with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. God looks upon these Israelites, and he takes notice of them. So he calls a boy whose dad was Levi, from the house of Jacob. All of this is generational. So he reveals himself to Moses as a burning bush. He starts talking to him. And we're going to read that in Exodus 3:4-6. It says, when the Lord saw that he had turned aside to see, God called to him and called him out of the bush and said, Moses, Moses. And he said, here I am. Then he said, come no closer, remove your sandals from your feet, for the place on which you are standing is holy ground. He said further, I am the God of your father, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. And Moses hid his face, for he was afraid to look at God. He's there with him. And God is saying, don't be afraid. I'm that same God who's made covenant with every person in your family. It is me. It's really me. So don't think God's not going to verify who he is to you. I promise you he will. He will find a way to do that. So even after all the excuses that we get to hear, some of them really good ones, I've given good ones too, God reveals through his name the very covenant that he had with them. And we read that in 13-15. It says, but Moses said to God, if I come to the Israelites and say to them, the God of your ancestors has sent me to you, and they ask me, what is his name? What shall I say? What shall I say to them? And God said to Moses, I am who I am. He said further, thus you shall say to the Israelites, I am has sent me to you. God also said to Moses, thus you shall say to the Israelites, the Lord, the God of your ancestors, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob has sent you. So he told them to say two things, so that they knew they weren't messing with any other God, but the God, the great I am, right? I am who I am. Yahweh. This is a Hebrew name of God in the Bible, and this name is regarded by Jews too sacred to even be spoken. It means I am. He simply is. No beginning, no end, utterly independent, depends on nothing. He's the same yesterday, today, and forever, and he has lots of names. In your homework, I've got this full list of names and where you can find it in the Bible of who he is. Yahweh is one of them. And the Lord is my banner. Who needs victory? So for every obstacle, situation, circumstance in your life, he's got a name. He's the solution. This isn't a coincidence. He is the solution and the only solution. He's a God of generations. So we see this buildup of generations, the same God of every generation. He's established his promises in relationship with every one of them. He makes himself real to each one in his own ways, and he's the same. And I believe in the God of generations. I know you do too. There's somebody in your family who's probably prayed for you, right? Who's claimed some things. Because when you say this prayer, as for me and my house we serve the Lord, I don't take that lightly. I don't. Because I say it's not for you and your few, it's for you and your all. For every single one. So that's a promise that he makes with us. I stand here today because of those promises. Platforms my grandfather had as a minister, and things that he did, and prayers that he had. And believe me, it didn't look like it some of the time. All of his sons are alcoholics. All of them. Horrible things happen. It didn't change what God said, though. It didn't change the promise he made. And that's what I'm saying. They never end. So in Matthew, here we go. Matthew 22:32 says, I am the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. He is a God not of the dead, but of the living. He's talking about this in the New Testament, y'all. That he's the same, always been, and even though they're not here anymore, you are. And he's your God. The God of the living. Today, I'm not was, I is. I am, right? That's what he's saying. That's what he's saying to them. And he's a God of relationship. He longs for relationship. He longs to get back to the cool of the day. That's in Genesis, right? We serve a God who still speaks and designed us for communication. And this is more than the 5-minute prayer or the prayer when we need something. It really is. It's a communication where he wants to tell you what to do. Now this is hard, okay? So go back to Genesis, the God of the cool of the day. Back in Genesis, what happened is, everyone knows, Eve ate from the tree, right? Mm-hmm. The tree of the knowledge of good and evil, right? Mm-hmm. She gives it to her husband and he eats it too. God never intended us to decide for ourselves between good and evil. He didn't. He intended to walk with us and talk to us, and we would do what he said to do. So when they ate of that, they gained knowledge of what's good and bad, and they had to choose for themselves. That's what the fall is that we have to choose now for ourselves. But because of this gap that he bridged, we don't do it alone anymore. We don't have to do it without him. And this is what it is. He wanted to tell us what's good in God. He never intended for evil to be here, for us to have to make a decision. Right? Do I go and have a glass of wine? Right? Where, oh my gosh, I'm going to feel so guilty. Oh my gosh, I can never go to this place ever again. Oh my goodness, I'm seeing something I'm not supposed to see. And we go through our lives, that's what we do. We're riddled with all this guilt. Did we ask him? Should I go to this job, have this job, move to this city, go on mission? What is it I'm doing? If we're not talking to him, we don't know. We really don't. And so we think, or we put in our minds what's good and evil and bad and God, and that's not the way he intended it. He intended it for us to have a communication with him, that every question you have, he's going to answer. Everywhere you're going to go, he's going to tell you. Every move that you're going to make and you ask him, that's what I'm saying. He's saying, just tell them, I'm God. I am. I am who I am. Just tell them that. And that's what it is. So now this is where we get to. When we get to that point where you're having communication with him, you're going to know. He's going to reveal it to you in all the 1,000 ways that he talks. That's what he's going to do. So, the God of David, he grew up knowing God has set him apart. We talked about this last week. He's anointed in front of his brothers, and he's set apart from them immediately. He knows it. Even though he goes to back to the sheep, he knows it. Because he was kingdom-minded, he knew and trusting him alone would bring victory. He wrote the Psalms, right? He would cry out. His God would not be mocked. He believed in the Lord of hosts. That means that he was the Lord of the armies in heaven. He believed God was the Lord over the armies in Israel. That's why he knew when he defeated Goliath, no big deal. God's going to have victory here. And all you have to do is read Psalms to know who David believed God to be. In Psalm 97, the Lord is king. In Psalm 90, Lord, you have been our dwelling place. Every single psalm, Lord, God, you are mighty. It's all in there, who he thought. In Psalm 145, David sings a song to the greatness and goodness of God. And we'll look at that today. Psalm 45, just a few verses, 1 through 3. I will extol you, my God and King, and bless your name forever and ever. Every day I will bless you and praise your name forever and ever. Great is the Lord and greatly to be praised. His greatness is unsearchable. Meaning he's so big and so vast, we cannot search it. We cannot hide from him. We can't. He's so huge. So then, after 400 years of silence, we see in Matthew 1 the promise fulfilled. The promise that he's made, that the prophets have been telling them about, it finally comes to pass. And it tells you right here, Matthew 1:1. An account of the genealogy of Jesus the Messiah, the son of David, the son of Abraham. So Matthew actually accounts the entire genealogy to show proof that the Messiah is the Emmanuel, God with us, the ones the prophets spoke of, the one they said, the soon coming king. All of those things, he lays it out here to prove it to us, to verify that this Jesus was coming and he was who he was. So through the very lineage of David, this is who we're studying, was the promised Savior and King. So this anointing that he gets, this covenant with David, it's more than him being king one day, okay? He was promising that through his very lineage, an inheritance of someone greater is coming. And we see that when David was set apart, so was every generation after him. And it's recorded right here. Right here it is. God means business about this generational stuff. He does. From beginning to end, he means business. When he makes a covenant and he makes a promise. So Jesus comes on the scene and he begins to radically change the world. No other person ever born split time. Nobody. Not even angels saying, I don't know when I was born. But here we have BC AD, right? He healed the sick and did miracles. He loved the ones who were outcasts. He ate with the most detested people of his time. He told Zacchaeus to get off the tree. He was coming to his house. And nobody liked Zacchaeus. Nobody. He ate with the most detested people and he let disgusting women touch him with their hair. Okay? This is radical stuff. And he hung out with fishermen and tax collectors and he called these people disciples. When you were going to be a rabbi in that time, you had to have some qualifications to let other people be discipled by you. They had to have some qualifications. You don't just let somebody off a boat do this, okay? He was radical and scandalous even for today. If he were to come to our church now, what would we say? Right? I mean, John the Baptist. I mean, think of these people. These are people proclaiming the word. So this is some pretty scandalous stuff. So this is only the 3 years we know about that are recorded in the Bible. Actually, John has the last 2 recorded. Everybody else has the last year of his life recorded. All the other ones of the main Matthew, Mark, Luke. So after spending some time with these people who keep following him around, right? And it gets bigger and bigger, he begins to ask them who they think he is. And not before he walks in the truth of who God says he is. We're going to read Matthew 16:13. Most famous part, I think. Now Jesus came to the district of Caesarea Philippi, and he asked his disciples, who do people say the Son of Man is? And they said, some say John the Baptist, others Elijah, and others Jeremiah, or one of the prophets. And he said to them, but who do you say that I am? Simon Peter answered, you are the Messiah, the Son of the living God. And Jesus answered him, blessed are you, Simon, son of Jonah, for flesh and blood has not revealed this to you, but my Father in heaven. So here we have, it says, and I tell you, you are Peter, and on this rock I will build my church, and the gate of Hades will not prevail against it. Where he's at, Caesarea Philippi, this isn't a coincidence that he takes them to this god-awful place. It's not like a mountain that Jen is going to in the summer, whenever she goes. It's a very different kind of place that he's taking. Okay? Caesarea Philippi was a location of the caves of Pan and the place of the pagan gate of Hades. And he mentions it right here, where he's at. And this is the area that the first king of Israel, Jeroboam, led the northern kingdom of Israel right into idolatry. Very first time they did that was right here. This very spot. And this is also the same place where the Greeks and Romans received revelations from the god Pan, who's mentioned in classical writings as the seer or fortune teller and a giver of revelations. So he's standing with his disciples on a mountain surrounded by false gods and pagan gods, and he asks his disciples a very important question. Because even though you can be surrounded by what's false, the truth will always prevail. Always. Based on the answer given, Jesus knew that the Holy Spirit had revealed what he had known to be true his whole life. He hadn't told anybody yet. And Peter's standing there, and he gives him the confirmation. You're the Son of God, the Messiah, the one we've been waiting for. Standing in a very spot that's called the gate of Hades. He gives them this revelation right there of who he is, this confirmation. Peter finds out. Simon reveals to Jesus who the Holy Spirit reveals he is. You are the Messiah, the Son of the living, remember, not dead, living God, right? So we see on a different mountain, after Jesus had been baptized, that Satan came to tempt him in Luke 4, 1 through 13. Another very famous verse. Yet I saw something different this time. It says, the temptation of Jesus. Jesus, full of the Holy Spirit, returned from the Jordan and was led by the Spirit into the wilderness, where for 40 days he was tempted by the devil. He ate nothing at all during those days, and when they were over, he was famished. And the devil said to him, if you are the Son of God, command this stone to become a loaf of bread. And Jesus answered him, it is written, one does not live by bread alone. And the devil led him up and showed him in an instant all the kingdoms of the world. And the devil said to him, to you I will give the glory and all this authority, for it has been given over to me, and I give it to anyone I please. If you then will worship me, it will be all yours. And Jesus answered him, it is written, worship the Lord your God and serve him only. And then the devil took him to Jerusalem and placed him on the pinnacle of the temple, saying to him, if you are the Son of God, throw yourself down from here, for it is written, he will command his angels concerning you and protect you, and on their hands they will bear you up so that you will not dash your foot against a stone. And Jesus answered him, saying, it is said, do not put the Lord your God to the test. And when the devil was finished with every test, he departed from him until an opportune time. I think he got tired of Jesus saying it is written, that he said, okay, well, it is written too. I know too, right? So Jesus gave the response to each temptation. He's declaring the word. But there's something else the devil was asking him. If you are the Son of God. How many times does Satan ask us? If you are the daughter of God, then why are you thinking that way? What's going on with you? Why are you fighting with so-and-so? Why are you angry about that? That's not how I heard Christians are supposed to do it, and he starts quoting you all this, right? That's what he does, because he knows the word. He knows what's coming, too. So that's what I'm saying. That's what he's standing there with Jesus, and he's asking Jesus, so why wouldn't he ask us? If you are the daughter of God, right? He's asking Jesus this, but let me tell you, Jesus believed who God had called him to be. This is how I know this. We read in Luke the chapter before, 3:21 and 22. And when all the people were baptized, and when Jesus also had been baptized and was praying, the heaven was opened, and the Holy Spirit descended upon him in bodily form like a dove. And a voice from heaven came down, "You are my Son, the beloved. With you I am well pleased." Who told him first? Right? God told him first. The Holy Spirit came and God was speaking to him right there. And I don't know if everybody heard it or how many people heard it. In different accounts, it tells you some heard it, some heard thunder, some heard God. Either way, he's saying, "You are my Son." Do you think Jesus believed that? You bet he believed that, because that's exactly what Satan was tempting him with in the very next chapter. If you are the Son of God. Well, he knew he was the Son of God. He knew he was, right? Christ knew God. He knew God as his Father. He teaches them how to pray, saying, "Our Father, who art in heaven." So he'd established his relationship with him. He knew that he was God's Son, the Savior of the world. And he didn't just know it, he believed it. Because the enemy had to flee from him. He didn't have any more to give. Because what he was questioning was already getting answered, right? So, because we believe in God, because we believe in Jesus, we can believe in ourselves and who he alone says we are. But believe me, the enemy will go after who God says you are and what he says to us. But we have an advocate against the accuser. Jesus gives a promise of the Holy Spirit in John 14. (14, 15 through 7). It says, "The promise of the Holy Spirit, if you love me, you will keep my commandments. And I will ask the Father, and he will give you another advocate to be with you forever. This is the Spirit of truth, whom the world cannot receive, because it does not see him nor know him. You know him, because he abides with you, and he will be in you." He's not in them yet, but it says he will be. And that was the promise.